little yarnivores, spiderettes, and arachnids. Hope you're all doing well. So, as you can see, I'm back again for the Kaleidoscope crochet along. And the reason why is because I've been getting so many requests, comments, questions, and so forth that I keep doing it. So, here I am. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, because this project is getting rather big, please bear with me while I make adjustments and so forth throughout this project because got to make do, right? All right, so before I begin, I just want to clarify something. I've been getting some questions about the number of rounds around the entire perimeter. Can you do a different number than 2? Yes, you most certainly can. The only thing is it has to be an even number of rounds, otherwise it won't work. Because if you did, say, 3 rounds, well, this space up here would have a cluster in it. You need a center space, all right? So if you want to do 2 rounds, 4 rounds, 6 rounds, however many, it doesn't really matter, has to be an even number. That is, of course, the main stipulation. But if you have an odd number, it will not work. All right, not for the way that I've been going about it. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, haven't used my orange yarn in a while, so I figured let's go for it. So going into the 3rd double crochet to the right of my center space, just as we've been doing before, pull up the yarn, chain 1 and a single crochet into that same stitch. So we have our anchor, and then into the center space we do 2 clusters separated by a chain 2 space. So that's 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 more double crochets. And my yarn is being argumentative with me. There we go. All right. Actually, I'm just going to raise the angle of my camera to make it a little bit easier so that I don't have to be hunched over quite so badly. All right. So we did our 2 clusters, and we do a chain 1, and we go into the 3rd to the left. So that would be 1, 2, and 3 with a slip stitch, like so. And then we need to chain 2. All right, skip to the next 3rd. So the chain always counts as 1, 2, and 3. So into that middle one, we do a single crochet. And then we have to turn our work. And like I said, this is going to be a little cumbersome, but I'm going to do the best I can. The bigger this project gets, the more tricky it gets to film this, but hey, if you guys can put up with my antics, I'll forge ahead. All right, so that counts as the first one. So into that bottom space, 2 more double crochets. There we are. And then we chain 1, and then into this space we do our 2 clusters once more, separated by a chain 2 space. That's 2 and 3, chain 2. Just gotta adjust my work here a little. Sorry. All right, so we did our cluster, a chain 2, do another cluster. 3. All right. Chain 1. Pull on our little tail down there a little. And then into that bottom space, we do the last cluster of the row. And I don't have a preordained number of rows per color. I just sort of do what feels right. All right, so chaining 1 and going over to the third space again. So that's 1, 2, and 3 right here with a slip stitch. All right, and I think I'm going to do another one, maybe another 2. I don't know yet. So going to chain 2. That was 1 chain, 2 chains. Skip to the third again. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that is the first double crochet of the next cluster. Do a single crochet. All right. Then we turn our work again. I'm sure it's a lot easier for you guys to do this than it is for me right now. All right. Because you can do this on your lap. Makes it a bit easier, I imagine. All right. So then we need to finish off this cluster with another 2 more double crochets underneath. And 2. And chain 1. And then 3 double crochets into this space here. There we go. Chain 1. And then our 2 sets up here, the 2 clusters separated by a chain 2 space. There we are. Chain 2. And then 3 more doubles. Chain 1. And then into this space we do another cluster of 3 double crochets. Also, I must apologize for the last 2 videos that I put up for the crochet along. I had to separate it into parts A and B because my video editor was giving me trouble uploading. I do apologize. I guess it was too big of a file. All right, so I chained 1, and then into this space down into here, we do our last cluster of the row. You know, I understand that there are always limitations with technology, but I'm doing the very best that I can with my limited tech-savvy know-how, which is pretty limited. All right, so again, we skip to the third. So we were into this stitch, so that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first double of that next cluster. We do a slip stitch. All right, so we have 3. I think I'll do one more, just because. All right, so that's chaining of 2. Skip to the third, so that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's into the chain stitch. We're going to do a single crochet. And yes, it's always tricky to get into those chain stitches, but if you are patient yet persistent, you can do it, like so. So we turn our work once again. as soon as I get this settled, I will continue on with the next row. Alright, so turn the work, and now we do 2 more double crochets into that bottom space. So that's 1 and 2, chain 1, do another cluster into this space here. There we are. And then, actually, see, I ended up catching my yarn on the previous stitch. See how that's split there? Just going to redo that, no big deal. There we are. Then we chain 1, do another cluster into the next chain space. See, that's one of the things that I like about crocheting, is that if you make a mistake and you catch it quickly enough, it's very easy to make reparations. Alright, so I chained 1, and now into this space here, we do our 2 clusters. And 3. And chaining of 2. Same space, we do another cluster to finish off the corner. Chain 1, and then another cluster into the next chain space. There we go. And 1 more, and then 1 more after that, and then I think we'll be finished with the orange for now. I may pick it up again for this triangle, but we'll see, right? And chain 1, and then finally 1 more into this bottom space here. Oops. That's 1 and 2 and 3. Chain 1, and then into the third once again, which is of course going to be into this chain space. We're going to do our slip stitch. And I'm sure that I can get in there. It's just a little bit tricky sometimes, but I'm good like that. Alright, ta-da! Alright, so gonna snip my yarn, and now let's see, which color should I do next? Well, first I've got to turn my work. Fun, fun, fun. Alright, I'm thinking, how about gray? Alright, so to begin with the gray, we have to find our third one again. So our chain was the last one, so it's 1, 2, and 3. So into this space here, get our gray up here, and we shall get this going. Alright, pull up a loop, leaving ourselves enough tail, and we chain 1 and do a single crochet into that same stitch. Okay. And then into this space here, we we do our 3 doubles, like so, and make sure that the orange, in my case, in your case it's probably a different color, just make sure that that's a little bit taut. All right, so we can go on our merry way. Let me just shift my work over a little bit. All right, so chaining 1, do our 3 doubles, etc., etc. Now, I must say that I never thought that I would have quite the response as I've been having with this crochet along. I'm delighted that I am able to help you guys, very much so. And I appreciate all of your comments and, your warm sentiments and everything. Believe you me, I really do. It means so much. Yeah. Some of you appreciate the chatter. A few of you don't. I apologize. Believe you me, I do. I understand that it's not necessarily for everybody, but doing these crochet alongs where the video is the better part of an hour, it gets lonely just saying this is the stitch, that is the stitch, and that seems too mechanical, too robotic for me. All right, so since we reached the corner, I'm going to do our 2 clusters separated by a chain 2 space. So for those of you that don't like the chatter, well, again, I apologize, but it's really the only way that I can keep doing this. There we go. I mean, I've seen a lot of tutorials where there's no audio at all, and there's just text at the bottom of the screen, and that I find even more disconcerting, because then you really have to look. You can't listen and look. No, you just have to look. And to me, video is about looking as well as listening. All right, so as you can see, I did my 2 in the top. I've just been working my way down. Typical clusters. Nothing out of the ordinary if you've been following along this long. All right, and then 1 more after this to finish this particular row anyway. So into the space down below. That's 1. And oops. And 2. And 3. Then we chain 1. And so we have to find the 3rd again. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. Do our slip stitch. And I think I'll do another round row, whatever, of the gray. So I'm going to chain 2. And then we skip to the 3rd again. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the middle double crochet of the next cluster. And actually, no, not a slip stitch, a single crochet. Excuse me. There we are. And then we turn our work and we get started in on the next row. Just let me adjust my work and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so gonna keep on keeping on. So to finish up this cluster, we do 2 more in this bottom space down there. Like so. chain 1. We're just going to keep working our way up. Now, a thought occurred to me that I will finish up this row, and then I think I'm going to go right back to the orange, sort of creating a striped look within this particular triangle. And we'll get there, you and me together. All right, so just going to work our way to the top of this triangle. Cluster, cluster, cluster. There we go. Almost there. There we go. So 2 chains, and then work our way down the side of the triangle. There we go. Also, I very much appreciate all of the lovely photos you guys have been sending and sharing with me through my Facebook page as well as through Instagram. I love seeing your work. I really do. Because, you know, as I always think of us, we are a crafting community. And we are here for each other. You know, not just to admire each other's work, but also to give helpful hints, suggestions, constructive criticism, you know. So I love seeing what you guys come up with, because otherwise we may as well be in entirely insulated bubbles, and when we do that, the creativity tends to fizzle a little bit. You know, so it's good to expose yourself to new concepts and ideas and things. So I appreciate it. Most definitely. All right, so now we have reached the end of this row. So going into this bottom space here, do our last cluster with the gray, and then we shall carry on. Ta-da! So chain 1, and making sure that this tail is pulled a little bit taut. And we need to go into the third, so that would be 1, 2, and 3, so that's the middle, with a slip stitch. And yes, I'm going to cut my yarn once more. Pull out my tail. There we are. And yeah, I think I'm going to go back to the orange for this series of triangles. I think that's what I'm going to do. So let me grab that and we'll get started in on the next series of rows. Alrighty, so to continue right along, we need to go into the third, making sure that this is taut once again. We need to go into the third from this stitch here. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first of the next cluster. Now that first double crochet there. And so we pulled up the loop, chain 1, and single crochet into that stitch to anchor. And then we do our 3 doubles right down into there. So that's 1, and 2, and 3. Like so. Just pulling that tail a little bit and shift over. All right, so I'm going to keep on keeping on. Chain 1, and then do our clusters along the side, down the other side, just as we've always done. Now, I did recently also get a question about, can you turn this into a rectangular blanket? Well, maybe. Now, I mean, what you could conceivably do is when you've done the perimeter rounds, you could then do the sort of granny stitch in rows up two sides, two opposing sides of your piece. There is a way that you can do that. However, I don't think that it would look nearly as optically interesting if you did it that way. Another thought that came to my mind is, excuse me, another thought that came to my mind is to continue doing these triangles on just two opposing sides. Now, whether or not that would actually work, I'm not sure because I haven't actually tried it. But it might. There is that possibility. It might. All right, so I've reached the corner here. Sorry for the sidetrack, but chain 2. And then do another cluster. See, what I'm thinking offhand is that if you had, say, this triangle that we're doing now, finish this large triangle, and then do a large triangle on the opposite side of the square, and then do, see, we have this big one, right? And then do small ones, it's like pretend, this is going at the complete angle here, right? And then do smaller ones off the corner there, and then doing another large one over there. But I'm not sure how it would work when you reach the corner here. That's the only main stipulation. I mean, it's food for thought, don't get me wrong. But as for whether or not to actually try it, I don't know. Because it's like right now I know what I'm doing. Otherwise, that it's sort of going into a blind territory. I don't know. But by all means, if any of you wish to experiment with the notion, go for it. Who am I to say no to that? Whether or not I will, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's definitely worth something. It's definitely an idea worth entertaining. However, right now I'm more interested in just doing this particular project the way that I initially set out to do it. Just throwing ideas out there, that's how we learn and grow as creative people. Sorry for my rambling. You know me. All right, so into this space down here, we do our last cluster of this particular row. There we are. And then we chain 1, and this row will be done as soon as we do a slip stitch. All right, so that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first double of that cluster. We do our slip stitch right in there. Chain 2. And we find the third once again because I want to keep on with the orange. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's into the chain stitch. We do our single crochet. There we are. And now we turn our work once again. And I grab some more yarn. And we're going to keep on keeping on. I think that I'm going to keep going with the orange for a little bit, at least for this next row. So, to keep on with this, we're going to do 2 more double crochets down into here. There we are. Chain 1, and then just do our clusters up the side. Like so. There we go. Yeah, so if any of you wish to try making this blanket into a rectangle, would be very, very much interested to see what you guys come up with. Because I know that a square format isn't necessarily for everybody, but it does make a nice throw, if nothing else. Alright, and so we've reached the tippy top up here. So we've got our 1 cluster, chain 2, and then we do our 2nd cluster into that same space. There we go. Chain 1, and then work our way down this side like shaboom. There we go. Now, late last night I was working on chapter 2 of The Picture of Dorian Gray, and let me tell you, it may only be 15 pages, but it's a lot of filming. But I'm really quite pleased with how it turned out. And, the story is really starting to unfold. And I'm rather enjoying it. I like the story itself. I like the concept. And I find Oscar Wilde to have such a... I don't know if I would say lyrical quality to his writing, but very beautiful, very thought-provoking. He himself was very, very thought-provoking and very controversial in his day, but I like his stuff. There we go. And let's just keep on keeping on. There. And also recently I started doing the poems of Emily Dickinson, and I don't know, just generally having a good time with it all. Alright, so now 1 more cluster down into here. There we go. Oh, there. And, alright, so then, make sure that that's a little bit taut. We chain 1, and then we find the 3rd once more. So that's going to be the 1, 2, and 3 into that chain stitch. We do a slip stitch. There we are. And then we chain 2. And then we find the 3rd once again, So that is 1, 2, and 3. So that's the third of this cluster. We do a single crochet stitch, and then we turn the work. So I'm going to do that and adjust my piece, and then we will get started. All right, back to work. All right, so going to finish up this cluster that we started by doing our 2 doubles into that bottom space. If I can get all of my plies on my hook. There we go. So that's 1 and 2. And then we're going to just work our way up the side of this triangle. And I think I'm going to do, after this row, 1 more row in the orange, so that I started with 4 and then I finished with 4. And then we'll go on to a different color, I think. I think that works. You think that works? I think that works. Now, I can't hear what you're saying, but I'll accept a nod of the head. Alrighty. We're just going to scooch our way along here. And chain 1 and keep at it. There we go. So, yeah, aside from everything else, yes, I'm still working on various other projects. And currently working on a couple of more different shawls that I hope to do videos on. They're still works in progress, and I like to finish them before I do a tutorial on them. It's just what I like to do. I like to be able to show you guys an actual finished piece before I present it. And yeah, one of the more recent ones that I did was the 1-row shawl, which Purple Iguana from Ravelry was kind enough to say, yes, you can use my pattern for your video. So that was very sweet of her, and I very, very much appreciate it. And she also has a bunch of other patterns on her collection of, patterns on Ravelry as well. There we go. So we've got our second cluster going into this top space here. We're almost done with that. And there we are. See, we're cruising right along, my dears. All right. So now we're just going to work our way down the side of the triangle, going back down with our clusters. Now, also working on some knitted pieces as well, and those always take longer than the crocheted ones. So for those of you knitters out there, I'm still going to be doing knitting tutorials. Don't worry. I know it's been a while, and I do apologize for that. It's just, it's a lot faster and a lot easier to do crocheting tutorials because, it's just a lot faster. As far as the difference between the two mediums, I like them both for different reasons. Most assuredly. With crocheting, I like the fact that if you make a mistake, you can fix it a lot easier with crocheting than you can with knitting, because you only have one stitch on your hook at any given time for the most part, and that makes it a lot easier as opposed to knitting, where yes, all of your stitches are working stitches. So if you make a mistake, well, yeah, it can be cause for a nervous breakdown at times. Believe you me, I understand. I've been there. Especially if it's a very wide piece that you're working on and you have to frog that. Oh, Oh dear. All right, so we've reached the end of this row. Oh, frabjous day. All right, so we do our 3 doubles into that bottom space, and then shaboom. All right, so we chain 1, and then we have to find the 3rd once again. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. All right, so that's the last stitch of that. So we do a slip stitch, like so. And then we chain 2, and then we find the 3rd. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's the middle one. We do a single crochet. All right. So, going to do this last row with the orange. I'm just going to turn my work, set up, and we'll be right back. All right, so let's get into this row. So finishing this up with 2 more doubles down in the space down here. Yeah, so like I was saying, that crocheting, yes, it works up a lot faster. It's a lot easier to fix mistakes. And especially if you're doing a lacy pattern, it's a lot easier. However, some of the advantages to doing a knitted piece, well, if you're doing a very close stitched piece where it's not lacy at all and you wish for the piece to keep you very warm and toasty, it can be very stiff when it's crocheted. Because generally to do a closely stitched piece, you need a small hook. And so the yarn is pretty much crammed together, and the piece can be very stiff. Now, if you are knitting a piece, and the stitches are very closely packed together, very closely knitted, it still remains quite flexible. And I believe, I could be very much mistaken, but I believe that that is why I have seen many more patterns for knitted socks or knitted mittens, knitted gloves, where you really want the stitches to be very tightly packed together. I've seen more patterns for knitted ones than for crocheted ones. Now, don't get me wrong, they exist for both, and I have done projects utilizing both techniques, but I find that doing them knitted tends to work a little bit better, and it looks a little bit more refined. However, knitting a sock versus crocheting a sock, well, crocheting one takes a fraction of the time, and it's a lot easier. But it has a very, very different look and feel to it. So, as always, I always say to each their own. I'm just making personal commentary. All right, so we reach the corner one last time for the orange. So we chain 2 and do 1 more cluster into that same space. And after this row, we're going to change colors. Hoo-ha. All right. Now, I know that there are a number of hybrids that knit as well as crochet out there, me being one of them. So I'm interested about your thoughts. If you are a hybrid, which do you prefer and why? I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. All right, we are getting so close to the end of this orange, and I think I might swap over to the yellow next. Haven't used that in a while. Yes, I will settle for you nodding on the other side of the screen. Alrighty, almost there. Yes, yes, yes. I just love how this project is coming out. All right. Yeah, another really, really neat technique that I would very much like to do a tutorial on for you knitters out there. It is called Fair Isle knitting. And if any of you are familiar with, ski wear, all right, so we're going to do our 3 into that bottom space there. Ski wear, where it's 2 colors, and one of the colors is in the sort of design of a snowflake or a star or a moose head or what have you. That would be Fair Isle. It's a really fun technique. All right, so I've chained 1, and now I need to go over to the 3rd. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's into the center double crochet. We do a slip stitch. All right. Ta-da! And going to cut the work and turn. So, yeah, there's that technique. And actually, for those of you that remember when I did my giveaway, when I hit 1,000 subscribers, those 3 hats that were up for grabs, well, one of the 3 anyway, those were all done in the technique of Fair Isle. And if you can do the knit stitch, you can do the Fair Isle technique. All right, so now, yeah, I think we're going to go in with the yellow. And of course, there are also techniques of a very similar nature that you can do with crocheting in the same sort of style as knitted Fair Isle. I might go into those as well. I'm always open to suggestions. Whether or not I'm actually going to do them, I don't know. But hey, I'm always listening. All right, so right now, I'm going to need to go into the 3rd stitch once again. So pulling this tail just a little bit taut. All right, so that'll be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the 1st stitch right there of that cluster. We pull up the yarn, do a chain 1 and a single crochet into that same stitch, like so. All right, and we're just going to mosey right along by going into the bottom of this space right in here with our first double crochet. There are also other techniques, intarsia and entrelac and tapestry and mosaic. There's a lot of different techniques out there, especially working with color, which has always fascinated me. And yes, I am open to suggestions. And if I had all the time in the world, I would be more than happy to accommodate each and every one of you with all of your requests. It's not easy, let me tell you. Yes, I do work, and when I'm not actually in the process of doing these videos, I'm often working on projects for future videos, as I'm sure a lot of you already know. It's a very ongoing process. All right, so just going to continue on up the side until we reach the top. But as I always say, it is a labor of love, and I really do enjoy doing this very, very much. And the whole process of doing this channel is something I never thought I would be doing. Seriously. I've been doing this channel now for less than a year. And, at the time of this filming, less than a year. It's right now, June? Yeah, the end of June. And I've only been doing it since September. And, a year ago, from right now, I never thought that I would be doing this. I always thought that I was going to be, just a watcher as opposed to a doer. And there's nothing wrong with either. I just, I don't know, I never thought I'd be doing it, and I couldn't be happier that I am doing it. Life takes interesting turns on us sometimes. All right, so I did my one cluster up top, did my chain 2, gonna do another cluster into that same space. This whole thing has been quite an experience, let me tell you. There we are. All right, so now we're just going to work our way down the other side. Just got to grab some more yarn and I'll be right back. All right, so we're just going to keep working our way down this side here. And let me tell you, for any of you that have been following me for a while, when I first started this channel, I really had no idea what I was doing. And to a fair extent, I still don't. I just sort of wing it. I listen to what you guys have to say and do the best that I can to accommodate all of you. But other than that, as far as, editing videos and, all the rest of it, I had no idea what I was doing when I first started, and I did not have anybody saying, oh, well, this is how you do it. No, not, not really. And, oh, yeah, pardon me. A lot of it was trial and error and learning as I went, but, I figured as long as I keep trying, something has got to give, and that's a good part of it, being persistent, keeping at it, And for any of you that have ever thought about starting a channel of your own, hey, go for it. Don't limit yourself. If you want to do it, I think you should do it. And if I can do it, well, hey, anybody can do it. All right, so we are almost to the end of this row. La la la. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another, well, first I have to do the last cluster into this space down in here. But yeah, I think I'm going to do another row of the yellow before I switch off. Oh, come on, work with me here. There we go. We chain 1. And then we need to find the third on this side. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first double of this cluster. We do a slip stitch, like so. All right, then we chain up of 2, and then we find the third once more. So that's the chain stitch, because that's 1, 2, and 3. We need to do a single crochet. Oh, you know how I just love going to this chain stitch. All right. There we go. And there we are. And then we turn our work once again, get ourselves situated as best I can. And then we're going to keep at it. So into the bottom space, we do another 2 more doubles. And then just keep going along up the side. There we go. And if any of you, like I was saying before about the idea of starting up your own channel, well, if any of you have any doubts and you're like, oh, no, I couldn't possibly do it, well, just remember that all of the people that do these channels, myself included, that's exactly it. We are people. We're not superheroes. We're not gurus. We're just people who want to put something out there to show people. We're just people. Unfortunately, there are some that have, shall we say, overinflated egos. I have nobody, in mind or in particular when I say this. I'm just saying that, it can get to some, and as a result, there's sort of like this grandiose manner. Well, okay, but, me personally, I do what I do. If you guys like it, I'm delighted. If you don't, well, I'm sorry, but this is what I'm doing. And that has been a personal struggle for me, actually, because I am the kind of person, I like to please everybody. Very much so. And if somebody isn't happy, well, I feel bad about it. Quite admittedly, I wear my heart on my sleeve where anybody can see it, and or, not like it. But that's part of the package deal, I am right on the border between Pisces and Aquarius, and I am a very emotional and creative person. And sometimes it gets the better of me. So we chain 2, because we did our 1 cluster. We do the chain 2 and another cluster in the same spot. Well, the process of this channel, really, to an extent, it's sort of forced me to try to develop a thicker skin. And it's been an exercise in being diplomatic and trying to be fair and help as best and as often as I can, but I'm also not Superman. I can't help everybody. I can't respond to everybody. I don't have a personal secretary. I don't have a Lois Lane to help me out. So it can be tricky, and ultimately at the end of the day, as long as you guys know that I am most definitely trying the very best that I can, that, to me, that's what counts, and that's what matters. Alright, so just going to scooch along down this way. Because this is something that I rather enjoy, whether it's on camera or off camera. I like doing this. I had been doing this for many years prior to even YouTube being around, as far as I'm aware. Alright, so we're almost done with this row here. And then, I think I'm going to swap to another color pretty soon. We're getting there. Most assuredly, we are getting there, my dears. This is a lot of work, but another thing I always say is that nothing worthwhile, or shall I say everything worthwhile, everything worthwhile takes time and patience. And this blanket, I think, is certainly worthwhile. Because when it's done, oh, it is going to be so lovely. And it's going to keep somebody nice and toasty. Not myself, because I have plenty of blankets of my own. I don't need another one, but... Alright, so going into this bottom space here, we do our final cluster with the yellow, and then we are going to swap off to something else. So chain 1, and then we need to find the third once again, and that's going to be that chain stitch. Lovely. Alright. First time. Alright. And slip stitch. Alright. So, snip, snip. Pull out our tail here, like so. Flip our work, and I'm going to get my next ball of yarn. Be right back. Alright, so I was going to do the white yarn, but I decided instead to break things up a little, go back to the gray for just one row, and then do the white to finish the triangle. So, got my gray yarn here. Now, like I said, I'm playing it by ear. Alright, so make sure that this tail end is a little bit taut, and that was into that chain stitch. So 1, 2, and 3. So it's the third double of this cluster. We're going to pull up our loop, chain 1, and single crochet into that same stitch. There we are. Pull our tail, and we're going to continue on our merry little way. And we make sure that the yellow is taut. And we do our doubles down into this bottom space here. And that's one of the fun things about this particular piece, is that there are no hard, fast rules. And I can't tell you how many questions I've been getting about, do you have a written pattern for this? And honestly, no, I don't. And I've said it a number of times, I think, and I'll say it again. I don't have a written pattern because, technically speaking, the starting square that you do can be, a different number of rounds than I did. And, that, of course, will offset the number of rows you will need per triangle. So, no, I don't have a written pattern, and I'm sorry for, those of you that, are not in a, computer-friendly environment all the time, and, you can't sit back with it as a written pattern. I am sorry. Again, this boils down to what I was saying before about you can't please everybody. So I do apologize, but that is why I decided, in part, that I was going to do this crochet along, because if I can't do one, I'm going to do the other. And if you've been following along with me so far, you know, you know perfectly well, I have put so much time and effort into this crochet along for you guys. For one reason, because I do love what I do. I love the pattern, and I love crocheting, and I love chit-chatting with you guys. And the other reason why I did the crochet along is because, I really wanted to make this whole process as clear and as understandable as I possibly could. And sometimes that just means going through it step by step, together. So, I'm sorry, no written pattern. However, there is, of course, nothing at all saying that you can't write it down, write down what I am doing, and go from there. You know, I have no personal objections to that. You know, just keep in mind that if you alter the number of rounds in your beginning square, well, that's going to change things a bit. You know, I mean, another thing, of course, that you can do, you know, getting back to what I was saying about making this into a rectangular blanket, well, technically speaking, you could make several kaleidoscope squares, smaller squares, you know, than what we're doing right now. You know, make several of those and then join those squares together to make a rectangular blanket, you know, like you would a regular granny blanket. Well, just this is a bit more complex than a regular granny blanket. All right, so we reach the corner, we chain 2, and we do another cluster into that same space. So, I mean, there are ways of creatively problem solving most anything. You know, now that would be really quite dazzling if one were to do, say, I don't know, offhand, maybe 3 squares by 4 squares. So a total of 12 small kaleidoscope squares, and stitch them all together, or do the join as you go method, or crochet them together, and do a rectangular kaleidoscope granny blanket that way. You know, it's another alternative, you know. The world is your oyster. Crack it open, find a pearl, you know, go for it. All right, so I'm gonna just keep working our way down this side, and then we'll be finished with the gray, and then we'll get into the off-white, and then this triangle is gonna be done. Very exciting, don't you think? You know, also, the other thing that I find about patterns is that my personal opinion, which is not to be taken too seriously or to be taken as law or anything like that. No, no, no. But my personal opinion when it comes to... excuse me. When it comes to patterns is that there really isn't necessarily anything definitive about patterns, and that they should be often taken with a grain of salt, and that it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. I can't tell you the number of times where I have been myself following a particular pattern, and what I would often do is follow the pattern the first time from start to finish as it was dictated, you know, in the instructions, and, you know, do it as it said, this is how you do it. Then, after it's done, then you start to play with the pattern. You tweak it, you make alterations. You know, did this particular aspect of the pattern work for me? No? How can I play with it? You know, a lot of these stitches are basically Legos and Tinker Toys, just with yarn. And how you can reconfigure them to suit your own interests and your own needs and what you're trying to accomplish. Now that's the trick. You know, it's not just a matter of following something blindly and going into it like, okay, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. You know, well, you can think outside of the box, and I definitely encourage you guys to do that. You know, I am not the end-all be-all of anything. You know, I'm merely here trying to help you guys. All right, so we're into this last cluster for the gray row. You know, I definitely promote thinking outside of the box, being creative, creative problem solving, all that good stuff. Because as I always say, that's how we grow. All right, so now we do a chain 1, and we find the third stitch. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's the third of this cluster. We do a slip stitch. And because we're going to swap over to the white, we're going to pull up that loop, snip, snip our yarn, and pull out this loop. And we're going to turn our work. And now we're going to start with the off-white. All right, so we need to find the third stitch. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So it's the middle stitch of this next cluster. And I'm going to pull up my white here. Do a chain stitch and a single crochet stitch. There we are. Okay, now got to make sure that the gray in this case is a little bit taut, and going to do our 3 doubles in the space down here. All right. Now I know that it is easy for me to say that you can use patterns as, a basis for whatever it is that you want to do. It's very easy for me to say that because my mind, it just seems to be hardwired for this. I don't know. Personally, I think that I'm quite dysfunctional in a lot of other areas of my life. But I like to think that I put the fun in dysfunctional. Crocheting and knitting, it just makes sense to me. Whether I have a pattern or not, it's just sort of like a different kind of language that I can speak fluently, and I never really had to agonize over it. I mean, don't get me wrong, this has taken me many, many years of constant work, but it clicks with me, and part of that clicking is the fact that every day I'm stitching, literally. It's very, very rare that a day goes by where I'm not working on some sort of project. Very rare. In fact, I think the last time that I went for any period of time where I was not actively working on a project was when I was sick with the flu back in February. That was a very dark time for me. Let's not go back there. But the thing is that I spend so much time working on what I do here that it's become quite second nature. Now, I understand that not everybody is hardwired in the same way, and that everybody learns differently. Hey, that's fine. By all means, that is perfectly fine. However, what I'm trying to get across is that if you're willing to put in the time and the effort and be patient with yourself, don't forget to breathe. Oxygen is your friend. Shake hands with oxygen. If you're willing to put all that in, then you can come up with some really neat results. For example, there was a time where I was bent on making a sweater. I wanted to make a sweater so bad. And of course, to me, doing a knitted sweater would have been ideal, but it would have taken me that much longer. So I'm like, all right, I think I'll crochet one. Well, I started, and what's more is that I wasn't using a pattern. Oh my. That was an experience. let me tell you. Did I finish it? Yeah, I did. But I didn't put into account that my head had to fit through the hole at the top. Um, it looked nice, but there was absolutely no stretch, no give to the neckline. So getting the sweater on and off required the jaws of life. It was a very interesting experience. But at the end of the day, I could be like, "Yep, I made this. Now, could somebody please help me get this thing off of me?" So we got our two clusters in the top there, separated by our chain two space. Excuse me for my digression. But it is something that I actually did. And I was so proud of myself. Like, oh, look what I did. And it kept me toasty, and I was all pleased with myself. And, to me, it was a learning experience, and that is the most important thing of all. I learned from it because the next time when I decided, I think I'm going to try this again, I did put into account the fact that, yes, I need to be able to put on and remove this item, that I, did some ribbing around the neckline so that there was some stretch, some give to it. And it worked. It absolutely worked. And again, I did not use a pattern. And the whole point is that I learned from the experience through trial and error. And it was a very, very interesting and, granted, it was time consuming because a sweater does not take a weekend. Oh, no. No, that took quite some time. But I learned from it. So if I ever want to do it again, I'll be able to. And that's what I really hope that, that you guys will do, because it can be so gratifying. It really, really can, but you have to take a chance, By all means, you can follow a pattern. By all means, you can march to the beat of your own drum. In my case, I think sometimes it's a set of bongos. But you can do it. Nothing's saying that you can't. If you make a quote-unquote mistake, well, if you learned from it, it's not a mistake. It's a learning experience. And that's what matters. Don't be afraid. By all means, do not be afraid, because the worst thing that you could possibly lose throughout the experience is a little bit of time. But you can gain so much more from the experience than what you lose. And that is worth having. All right, so we're almost at the end of this row, which is, of course, a beautiful thing, my dears. We are cooking with gas. All right. We're almost done with this row. And this triangle is really coming along. Such a delightful thing. All right, so we're going to go into this bottom space here. And finish up this last cluster of the row. And we chain one. Then we have to find the third chain once more. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the middle. Do a slip stitch, like so. Chain 2. And then find the third. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So it's the first double. And we do a single crochet into there. And then we turn our work. There we go. And we're going to continue right along. Now, before I do that, so you can see that we have reached the, whatchamacallit, this last cluster. Now, what I could do, actually, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. Instead of finishing this row and then doing another one, I think this will be my last row because, actually, wait, no. Let me see here. Hang on one second. Okay, never mind. I was having a bit of a mental battle, and yes, we're going to keep going. Excuse me. Do not wish to confuse any of you whatsoever. I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right because, well, that's what I do, right? I want to get it right. All right, so we did our second 2 double crochets down into the base there. And then we chain 1, and then we're just going to continue all the way across and up this side of the triangle. And then we'll work our way down, and then it's one more row. The trick is that when you're going into this last series of clusters and you're approaching the end, it does not always fall in the same spot. So sometimes you do have to fudge just a little bit. Somebody was asking me because they wanted to go ahead. By all means, if you want to go ahead, who am I to stop you? So it doesn't always fall in the same spot. Ultimately, what you need to have happen is when you're doing your perimeter rounds after all of your triangles are done, you need it to lay flat. And for that to happen, well, there can't be too much slack or, it can't be too taut. So you have to have the right number of rows. And sometimes it requires a little bit of fiddling, There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just the nature of the beast. All right, so we're going to continue working our way up. And after this row, should be just one more to go. And then this triangle will be complete. Love it. Absolutely love it. Now, something that I have said in some previous videos, is, if you guys want me to continue the series, then let me know, by all means, because when I first started this crochet along, I didn't know how many of these videos I was going to do. If you wanted me to do the entire blanket, in every step, and I have no objections to that, because I'm going to be making this blanket regardless of whether or not I'm filming it. And so I didn't know if you guys needed me to do more parts to the crochet along, or if you guys were going to be good with just, 2 or 3 parts total. But like I said at the beginning of this one, I've been getting a lot of requests to keep going, and by all means, if you want me to, I shall. I rather enjoy doing this, and if it is of any help to any of you, then I will keep doing it. There we are. So we are in the corner, and then we do another cluster into that same space. And some of you have commented that you understand how the pattern works and that, you don't necessarily need me to keep going, but that you would like for me to keep going. Well, hey, great, you know. And I also understand that there are some of you, my viewers, who are not feeling well for whatever reason. And I'm very sorry to hear that. To those of you that have commented that you aren't well, it's very hard to hear, but, and I'm very sorry to hear it. But I'm glad that I can be here with you in whatever capacity that I can be with you, to help you through, at the very least, this project. If I can put a smile on your face, then hey, it puts an even bigger smile on my face because it makes this whole process that much more worthwhile. And so I know that some of you, you're not feeling well, and some of you, you don't get out much, and I can totally understand that. Believe you me. I have, shall I say, a very insular lifestyle. I go to work, I come home, I go to work, I come home. That's pretty much the extent of my my day. On the days that I don't have work, I stay home. I don't socialize very much, and I don't have any pets. I don't have a significant other, and I don't have a, shall we say, a burgeoning social circle. So that being said, I spend a lot of my time on this stuff. So I understand when some of you have said that it's like me doing these videos is like having, somebody to sit and chat with, and, it's like having company, over, and I can appreciate that. Believe you me, I do understand, and we're on the same page, It's okay. We're in this together. So that's, well, like I was saying before, it's like some people, they don't like my chit-chat and my banter, and they just want me to stick to the stitching. Well, this is about the stitching, but it's not just about the stitching. It's about you and me. And us. And we. Haha. All of us together, hanging out on the fiber spider's web. With hooks in hand, stitching the night away. And for me, it is 12:28 a.m., but time does not mean that much to a person like me. All right. So we're almost done with this row. And we've got one more. We can do this, my dears. All right. Okay. And just a few more. Almost there. Sorry for the squeaky yarn. I know it can be distracting. I don't know if it's because it's rather humid or if I've used this hook so much that I've taken off the finish. I don't know. But such is life, right? All right, so now down into this bottom space here, we're going to do the last cluster of this row. There we are. Chain one. All right, and we need to find the third once again. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first right in there. And we're so close. All right, so we do a slip stitch right in there. And now what we do is a chaining up of 3. 1, 2, and 3. See? I was unsure before, but now I am sure. All right. It's all good. All right, so now we did our chain 3, and then we turn our work. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doubting yourself, but there's very much something wrong with doubting yourself to the point where you just stop altogether. All right, so now I did my chain 3, and in this space here we do 2 more doubles to finish our last cluster. Well, the first cluster of the last row. See, even though it is a bit far over from here, if we kept going, it would be 1, 2, and 3, and it would be actually a stitch into this chain, which would be too far over for the height. So we need to make allowances. Now, if it's too much of a stretch, what we can always do, instead of doing 1 chain space up here, we could always do 2, so there's a bit more slack, but I don't think that'll be necessary. So again, there's some wiggle room, all right? So I'm going to get my piece situated, and we'll do our last row together. Alrighty, so just going to keep doing our last row, and right now my back is thanking the fact that this is going to be the last row, because I have my camera on a small tripod in front of me, resting on a volume of Edgar Allan Poe. I'm sitting cross-legged, and I am hunched over, stitching this as I go, so my back will be thanking me very much when I am done, but it's worth it. Even if I whine just a little bit from time to time, it is very much worth it. If it weren't, I wouldn't do it, but oh, it is. And what I was saying before about continuing on with this, I mean, I do this not just for me, but I do this so much for you guys. And so if you want me to keep doing the series, by all means, I will. Now, if you would like, I could do the next 3 sides of the square, the next 3 triangles. I could do those off camera. I could do them on camera. The next time when I need to do my 2 perimeter rounds, I could do those off camera. I'm totally open to suggestions, by all means. I'm not some sort of video tyrant. Not by any means. So I'm open to suggestions, and whichever sort of suggestion that I hear more of, that's probably the route that I'm going to go with. Whether you'd like me to do justice to the sense of the idea of a complete crochet along, or if you guys feel that, yeah, we get it, and you would have me rather, for lack of a better term, cut more to the chase and finish the rest of these triangles on my own, and then just get to the next set of triangles. Whatever works, really. To me, it's just as much your channel as it is my channel. Because I do value your feedback, your comments, your questions, everything. That's why I do this, by all means. All right, So, we are approaching the top. All right. We are getting there. Oh, dear. Squeaky yarn and all. Also, some of you have sent me more pictures of your work. I did do that montage collection of some of your work, and I was so happy to do that. I really liked sharing your work on my video, and again, thank you very much for allowing me to show everybody, because it gives a lot of people different ideas of how to play with color, using the same basic pattern but different colors. They really create different effects. And I've been receiving pictures since and after the fact, and I was thinking about perhaps doing another montage. It's an idea. Something that I may do again. I'm not sure. We will see. And if you would like to share any pictures, regardless of whether it would be for showing in a future video or not, as always, you can always show me what you're working on at my Instagram account, which is under Fiber Spider, of course, or you can go to my community page on Facebook, again, under Fiber Spider. And I would love to see what you're working on, always. It is sometimes a little bit tricky, I admit, for me to split myself in so many different directions between Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and remembering to breathe, that I'm not as quick as I would like to be as far as being responsive, and I apologize for that ahead of time. It's very difficult to keep track of everything that's going on at the same time, I do admit, but I do try. And if I don't comment or respond, please do not take it personally. Please do not, because I do the best I can. So we're almost done. We're just trucking along. We're almost done. And this triangle will be complete. And then I won't have to use any guesswork for the next three. I can just follow suit with what I have done, which is nice because one less thing to think about, right? All right. My goodness. And of course, if you guys have any questions, comments, I'd be so very glad to hear from you guys. And if I can respond to you, I'd be more than happy to. And if you haven't subscribed already, well, hit the subscribe button, because, even if this particular project is not something that you're working on, well, I've got loads more stuff in the mix. Other projects, other tutorials, other audiobooks, because if you've been watching me for any length of time, I've got lots of stuff up my little sleeve. And we're almost there. Just a couple more. I'm just surprised that my yarn hasn't been all tangly on me this filming session. Usually loves to give me a hard time. And then one more cluster into the base right here. All right. I love this. All right, now we've reached the end. Now I could do a chain one and then pull my yarn through. I'm just going to pull my yarn through as it is, I think. You know, leaving a nice long tail. Snip, snip. And pull it through. And we will deal with the connection to the next triangle a bit later. So listen, my dears. It has been fun, as always. And I really hope that you enjoyed this part of the crochet along, because you know I love doing it oh so much. And so listen, please let me know what you think, if you want me to keep going, etc., and all that good stuff. And so until the next video, stay inspired, stay caffeinated, and above all, stay stitching. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.